It's June 19th, 1994, late night in Houston. The Knicks are up 3-2 in the finals, one win away from their first championship since the 70s. That evening, Patrick Ewing's wingman, John Starks, is on fire. Shots are falling, and with only seconds left in the game, he pulls up for the dagger three. If this goes in, New York finally ends their 2 decades of waiting, and Patrick Ewing earns his title. But Houston's Hakeem Olajuwon is playing the best basketball of his career. Maybe the best in the entire NBA. This is the story of the 1994 finals, the ending to the perfect season for one superstar, and one of the biggest what-if moments of 90s NBA history. The league had just been shaken to its core. Michael Jordan, global superstar, inspiration for millions, and the driving force behind basketball's worldwide rise, stunned the world by announcing his retirement in October 1993, just after 9 seasons into his GOAT career. For the first time in years, the NBA was wide open. The Lakers' dynasty of Magic and Kareem was gone. The feisty Pistons had fallen apart. Larry Bird and the legendary Celtics dynasty had put their old-school Converse sneakers on the shelf. And most shocking of all, Jordan was playing a different kind of ball. Baseball. It was the perfect time for a new king to take the NBA throne. Enter the New York Knicks. Pat Riley had turned them into his ideal team. Tough, disciplined, physical, a group built to grind opponents down in the half-court. Patrick Ewing, the face of New York basketball, finally had his chance to prove he wasn't just a star with promise. He could be a champion, the man to bring a parade back to Times Square. For a city still living off the echoes of Clyde Frazier and Willis Reed in the 70s, this was the moment to reclaim the Garden's glory, and Knicks fans went wild throughout the season, believing more than ever that this was their time. But basketball isn't played on paper or emotion alone. The Bulls were still dangerous, with Scottie Pippen running the show. And on the other side of the country, something was brewing in Houston. The Rockets had the most complete superstar in the league. Hakeem Olajuwon wasn't just good, he was revolutionary. Graceful footwork, unstoppable post moves, elite defense, all in one package. In today's language, you'd call him the unicorn. Already by the end of the regular season, Olajuwon had bagged unique combinations of trophies, MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. He led Houston to 58 wins, and now he had the chance to win a championship, to silence anyone who still doubted his greatness. 2 teams, both seen as real contenders, with almost identical regular season records. They were heading for a collision course at the top. But the road to the finals is never simple. That's the paradox of the NBA. You can dominate from November to April, but once the playoffs start, only the toughest survive. The path to the 1994 finals for the Knicks and Rockets was not luck. It was the NBA at its most dramatic. Before we dive into that epic 7-game showdown, let's rewind the 1993-94 season and see how both teams fought their way to the finals. Both teams were mirror images in the standings. The Knicks finished 57-25, second best in the East, giving up the top spot to Atlanta on tiebreaker. The Rockets were 58-24, second in the West, 5 games behind the 63-19 Seattle Supersonics. Both potential finalists faced each other 2 times during the regular season. And the result? Advantage Houston. In December, Rockets walked into Madison Square Garden and stole a win behind Hakeem's 37-point clinic. Stark's 35-point performance was not enough, and it was a reminder that as good as the Knicks' defense was, Olajuwon had answers nobody else in the league could stop. 2 months later in Texas, Houston got an even more convincing win by dismantling the Knicks 93-73 behind Hakeem's 29-point, 20-rebound night and swept the regular season series. Still, for New York, the whole season felt like a mission, building toward a chance to seize the open title opportunity. Patrick Ewing led the way with an average of 24 points a night, anchoring the league's best defense. Charles Oakley brought toughness, John Starks could swing a game when his jump shot was falling, and Anthony Mason was the kind of wild-card weapon every contender needs. Madison Square Garden hadn't felt this alive in decades. The swagger was back. When the playoffs came, Ewing's Knicks were ready to dethrone the champions of the past 3 years. The mighty, but this time Jordan-less Bulls. The first round against the New Jersey Nets, the Knicks treated it like business as usual. A 3-1 win, no drama. But in the second round, a completely different animal was waiting. The Chicago Bulls. This was the fourth straight year the two teams had met in the postseason. And even without Jordan, it was brutal. An exhausting series.
The ball, putting the Knicks defense back on their heels. Smith from deep.
Scottie Pippen nearly pulled it off by playing the role of the main star, but Ewing and Starks dragged New York through the series. For Knicks fans, this meant more than just advancing. It felt like Jordan was still present, even if he wasn't on the floor. And finally, after years of frustration, the Knicks outlasted the legendary champions in a 7-game series. Then came the conference finals against the Pacers. Another exhausting test. Reggie Miller lit up the Garden in Game 5 and trash-talked Spike Lee into NBA folklore. But the Knicks didn't fold. Game 7 was Ewing's signature performance. 24 points, 22 rebounds, and the dunk that sealed New York's trip to the finals. 2 of their first 3 rounds had gone the full 7 games. Some wondered whether the Knicks could keep it up against whichever powerhouse emerged from the West. But those doubts were in the minority. Proud New Yorkers were convinced. This was their year. Meanwhile, in Houston, everything revolved around one man, peaking Hakeem Olajuwon, and this was his masterpiece season. He averaged 27 points, 11 boards, 4 blocks, dominating opposition and dismantling every game plan thrown to stop him. Hakeem was so good that he became part of NBA history by joining Michael Jordan, winning MVP and Defensive Player of the Year in the same season. Like the Knicks in the first round of the playoffs, Houston got rather easy series wins, 3-1. Hakeem shredded the Blazers' front court in dominant style. But in the second round, the matchup was with a tougher opponent who was waiting, and that was Charles Barkley's Suns, the same team that bounced the Rockets a year earlier. And when Houston went down 0-2 by blowing huge leads at home, it looked like deja vu. The famous Choke City title in NBA folklore was born. But this time, it was different. Olajuwon wouldn't let it happen again. The Rockets stormed back, won 4 of the next 5 games, and crushed Phoenix in Game 7. That comeback was the turning point. Proof that this team was championship ready, and after choking in the beginning of the series, by the end they had already become the famous Clutch City. Conference Finals versus Utah was a shorter series. Even though Stockton and Malone were no pushovers, Houston smothered them in 5 games. Too much Hakeem, too much defense, too much balance in Rockets' roster. One would ask where the 63-win Sonics went. They should have fought Houston for the Western title. But you know what? Potentially this could be a separate subject for a video story. How an 8-seed Nuggets crashed out a 63-win Seattle number 1 seed team. But let's get back to the Rockets and the Knicks story. Compared to New York's 7-game slugfests, Houston arrived in the finals looking fresher, sharper, and riding Olajuwon's unstoppable momentum. The collision course felt like it was scripted. 2 teams, nearly identical records, and 2 franchises that had clawed through the league's most physical era. The 1994 finals were the definition of a grind, where every possession mattered. Every basket felt like it came through toughness and bruises. For the very first game, it was clear this wasn't going to be easy for either side. Game 1 in Houston, Hakeem wasted no time setting the tone. He put the pressure on the Knicks with his trademark footwork, dropping 28 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 blocks. New York struggled to score, managing just 78 points. The Rockets took it 85-78 and went up 1-0. But in Game 2, the Knicks answered. They slowed the pace, turned it into a wrestling match, and dragged Houston into their kind of game. Slow, physical, ugly. Patrick Ewing battled for 16 points, 13 rebounds, and 4 blocks, while Derek Harper steadied the backcourt. New York stole one on the road, 91-83, and suddenly had home court advantage. When the series shifted to Madison Square Garden, the city buzzed like it was 1973 again. The Knicks had momentum. In Game 3, the Rockets spoiled the party. Despite 20 points and 8 assists from John Starks, and Ewing adding 18 points and 13 boards, Houston forced costly Knicks turnovers and closed late behind Hakeem's 21 points, 11 rebounds, and 7 assists. The Rockets won 93-89 and took the lead 2-1. Game 4, the Knicks hit back. Ewing turned in a monster performance. 21 points, 12 rebounds, and 7 blocks. And the Knicks' defense suffocated Houston. Olajuwon still managed 32 points, but New York's balance carried the night, 91-82. The series was tied 2-2. Game 5, this one will always be remembered as the O.J. Chase game, with NBC splitting the screen between NBA and a white Bronco hitting the freeway. But on the court, the Knicks were locked in. Ewing controlled the paint, and New York held Houston to just 84 points. The Knicks win 91-84, and suddenly they were up 3-2 with 2 chances to close it out. Then came the famous Game 6, the moment that still haunts New York to this very day. Back in Houston, John Starks caught fire in the fourth quarter. Shot after shot dropped 16 points in the final period, and it looked like destiny was starting to smile. But then, one of the most impactful turning points in modern basketball happened. The Knicks trailed by 2 in the closing seconds. The ball swung to Starks on the wing, one clean release, and 20 years of waiting would be over. But Hakeem would not let that happen. With perfect timing, he stretched out and got just enough on the ball, a fingertip block that changed everything.
On the arc. Arch Starks. Rockets do not want to foul. Starks for 3, came up short.
The 3 never had a chance. Houston survived, 86-84, and forced a Game 7. In modern terms, this moment was similar to Ray Allen's desperate three-pointer at the end of Game 6 in the 2013 Finals. Same gravity. Fighting through their third 7-game series, the Knicks were already running on fumes. In a Game 7, Starks went ice cold. 2 for 18 from the field, 0 for 11 from 3. Ewing fought hard, but Hakeem was too much once again, finishing with 25 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, and 3 blocks. The Rockets closed it out 90-84 and claimed their first championship in franchise history. One fingertip. That was the difference between New York celebrating a long-awaited title and Houston beginning a dynasty. For the Rockets, it cemented Hakeem's place among the all-time greats. MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, and Finals MVP, all in the same season. It remains one of the most complete individual years in NBA history. For the Knicks, it was heartbreaking. This was the closest Patrick Ewing ever got to a championship. The last real chance the Knicks ever had to reclaim their 70s glory, and 3 decades later, New York fans are still waiting. For the NBA, it was a championship played in Jordan's shadow. Yeah, but what if Michael had been there? That's the question people still ask. But Hakeem's brilliance deserves more than an asterisk. He proved that greatness doesn't need validation. It defines itself. And the what if lingers. If John Starks' shot had gone in, maybe the Knicks are remembered as champions. Maybe Ewing's legacy changes forever. And maybe Jordan's comeback looks very different. Who knows? Hakeem still blocked the shot, and the rest is history. Do you agree the 1994 Finals carried more weight than most people remember? Drop your take in the comments. And if you enjoy deep dives into finals that defined legacies and changed the league, don't forget to like and subscribe.